the virus that Dr. Helen Walsh had unleashed during the failed peace. Negotiations spread through the Galactic Dominion's infrastructure like a plague. Within days, the empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years found itself blind, deaf, and unable to coordinate military operations across its vast territory. Reports flooded into Earth's command centers from human intelligence teams scattered throughout alien space. Dominion fleets were turning on each other, unable to verify friend from foe. Supply lines collapsed as automated systems shut down. Entire sectors declared independence as local commanders lost contact with central authority. Admiral Morrison stood in the rebuilt command center of Luna Base, watching displays that showed the dissolution of the mightiest empire in galactic history. The irony was not lost on him that humanity, the species the Dominion had dismissed as primitive insects, had brought down their civilization using the same technology that had once made them invincible. "All rebel forces, this is Admiral Morrison," he broadcast on captured Dominion communication channels. "The Empire is falling. Now is the time to strike for your freedom." Across the galaxy, species that had been enslaved for centuries rose up against their oppressors. The Kepler rebels launched coordinated attacks on Dominion installations throughout their sector. The vegan resistance emerged from hiding to reclaim their homeworlds. Even species that had been considered extinct turned out to have survivors, who had been waiting for this moment, but Supreme Commander Yithnel was not finished. Held prisoner on Luna Base, the alien leader had been quietly gathering intelligence about human capabilities and weaknesses. When he learned that Morrison was planning to attack the Dominion capital world, he made one final desperate gamble. "Release me," Yithnel demanded during his interrogation. "Give me a ship and a small escort, and I will surrender the capital system without a fight." Commander Barnes studied the alien commander with suspicion. "Why would you do that? What do you gain?" "My species faces extinction if this war continues," Yithnel replied. "Better to surrender with honor than be destroyed like animals?" Morrison was tempted to accept the offer, but his instincts warned him that this was another trap. The Dominion had never shown mercy to defeated enemies, and their leader was unlikely to surrender when he still commanded millions of soldiers and thousands of ships. "He's lying," Barnes said during a private strategy meeting. "Our intelligence shows massive fleet movements toward the capital system. He's trying to lure us into a final battle where he can use his remaining forces to maximum effect." Dr. Walsh agreed with Barnes' assessment. "The quantum signatures we're detecting suggest they're powering up weapons we've never seen before. Whatever Yithnel is planning, it involves technology they've been keeping in reserve." Morrison made his decision. "We attack, but not the way he expects. If Yithnel wants a final battle, we'll give him one he'll never forget." The human fleet that assembled for the assault on the Dominion capital was unlike anything that had ever been seen in the galaxy. Ships from dozens of liberated species fought alongside human vessels, their crews united by a common desire for freedom. The fleet included captured Dominion technology alongside human innovations, creating a force that combined the best of both civilizations. Admiral Grant commanded the main battle fleet from his flagship, a massive vessel built from salvaged alien hull sections and powered by human fusion reactors. Around him, thousands of ships prepared for what everyone knew would be the final battle of the war. "This is it," Grant told his captains during the final briefing. "Everything we've fought for comes down to the next few hours. Win or lose, we make sure the galaxy remembers that humans don't go quietly into extinction." The approach to the capital system revealed the scope of Yithnel's final gambit. The Dominion had stripped defenses from throughout their empire to create the largest military force in galactic history. Over 1 million ships waited in defensive formations around their homeworld, supported by orbital weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. But the most terrifying surprise was Yithnel's ultimate weapon, a massive space station built around the capital world's largest moon. The structure was clearly designed for a single purpose: the complete destruction of any enemy force that dared to challenge Dominion supremacy. "Energy readings are off the charts," reported Lieutenant Foster from her reconnaissance ship. That thing has enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. Morrison studied the tactical displays from his command ship, knowing that a direct assault would result in the destruction of his entire fleet. But humanity had not come this far by fighting fair battles against superior technology. All ships. Execute Dispersal Pattern 7, Morrison ordered. We're not going to fight their superweapon. We're going to ignore it. The human strategy was as insane as everything else they had done during the war. Instead of engaging the massive Dominion fleet, they scattered throughout the system in small groups, targeting supply depots, communication relays, and support facilities. The aliens found themselves defending everything and protecting nothing. Captain Foster led her squadron through the outer defenses, her ships moving too fast for the ponderous Dominion battleships to track. Around the system, dozens of similar attacks created chaos in the alien formations as commanders struggled to respond to threats coming from every direction. They're trying to defend their entire civilization at once, Foster reported. But you can't protect everything when your enemy is everywhere? The battle raged for 3 days as human forces systematically dismantled the infrastructure that supported the Dominion fleet. Fuel depots exploded in brilliant fireballs. Supply convoys were destroyed before they could reach their destinations. Most importantly, the communication networks that coordinated the massive alien force were disrupted by teams of human saboteurs. Yifnel watched from his command station as his carefully planned defense fell apart. The humans refused to fight the kind of battle he understood, instead striking at targets he had never considered worth defending. Without supplies and communication, his mighty fleet began to fragment into isolated units. Deploy the system destroyer, he finally ordered. If we cannot defeat them conventionally, we will eliminate them completely. The weapon that activated was beyond anything humanity had imagined possible. The space station around the moon began drawing power from the capital world's star itself, channeling stellar energy into a weapon that could destroy entire solar systems. The targeting systems locked onto Earth, 27 light-years away. They're going to destroy our homeworld, Dr. Walsh reported from her science vessel. Even if we win here, Earth will be gone. Morrison felt ice in his veins as he realized what the Dominion was willing to do. Rather than accept defeat, they would commit genocide on a scale that would make their previous conquests look merciful. But humanity had one final card to play. All ships, concentrate fire on the station's power core, Morrison ordered. Everything we have, everything we've built, everything we've learned, pour it all into that target. The coordinated assault on the system destroyer was humanity's greatest moment and their most desperate gamble. Ships from across the galaxy converged on the massive station, their crews knowing that failure meant the death of billions of innocent people. The battle was fierce and close, with human ships ramming into alien defenses and pilots making impossible maneuvers to deliver their weapons to critical targets. Admiral Grant led the final assault personally, his damaged flagship carrying nuclear warheads into the heart of the station's power core. For Earth, Grant said over the communication channel as his ship disappeared in a ball of nuclear fire, for every species the Dominion has murdered, for the right to exist. The explosion that followed could be seen throughout the system as the station's power core overloaded and tore itself apart. The system destroyer, the Dominion's ultimate weapon, became an expanding cloud of radioactive debris, floating around the capital world's shattered moon. Wide-eyed stared at the destruction of his final hope and felt something no Dominion leader had ever experienced, the knowledge of absolute defeat. His empire was gone, his fleet scattered, his people facing extinction or slavery under the species he had tried to exterminate. Surrender, Morrison broadcast to the remaining Dominion forces. Lay down your weapons and you will be treated with more mercy than you showed your own victims. The reply came not from Yifnel but from his subordinates, who had already begun abandoning their posts. The Galactic Dominion, an empire that had lasted 3 millennia, dissolved in a matter of hours as its remaining forces either surrendered or fled into deep space. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at a galaxy that had been transformed forever. The species that had been enslaved for centuries were free. The empire that had seemed invincible lay in ruins. And humanity, the primitive insects who were supposed to be extinct, had become the liberators of half. The galaxy. The cost had been enormous. Earth had lost nearly 2 billion people during the war, and entire human colonies had been wiped from existence. Heroes like Admiral Grant and thousands of others had given their lives to ensure humanity's survival, but they had also gained something invaluable, proof that no enemy. 2 years after the first battle, the impossible happened. The Galactic Dominion sent a message requesting peace negotiations. The empire that had never shown mercy to any species was asking to talk instead of fight. Admiral Morrison stared at the transmission in disbelief, knowing it had to be some kind of trap. The meeting was arranged on a neutral space station in the Outer Rim, far from both human and Dominion territory. The facility had been abandoned for centuries, a relic from a civilization that had been destroyed long before. Humans had learned to make fire. Morrison led the human delegation along with Commander Barnes and Dr. Walsh. They traveled in a single ship with minimal escort, knowing that if this was a trap, no amount of firepower would save them. The journey took 3 weeks through space that had become a battlefield. Between human forces and scattered Dominion fleets, the Dominion delegation was impressive in its scope and authority. Supreme Commander Yithnel himself attended along with representatives from all 12 member species of the Empire. Their ship was larger than most human cities, bristling with weapons that could destroy planets. The negotiations took place in a sterile conference room that had been hastily repaired for the occasion. Yithnel was a towering figure even among his own kind, with skin that seemed to absorb light and eyes that glowed with inner fire. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of absolute authority. The Dominion offers to recognize human sovereignty over your home system and 3 colony worlds, Yithnel announced. In exchange, you will cease all hostile actions against our forces and territories. The term sounded generous, but Morrison had learned not to trust anything that seemed too good to be true. Commander Barnes had been analyzing intercepted Dominion communications for months, and her intelligence network had uncovered disturbing information. "What about the other species fighting alongside us?" Morrison asked. "The rebels who have been helping our war effort. They are subjects of the Dominion," Yithnel replied coldly. "Their fate is not part of these negotiations." Dr. Walsh reviewed the technical data they had gathered about Dominion fleet movements. Despite the peace talks, alien ships were massing in systems throughout human space. The Empire was rebuilding faster than anyone had expected, replacing losses and developing new weapons. The negotiations continued for days, with both sides making minor concessions while avoiding the real issues. Morrison found himself impressed by the Dominion's diplomatic skills, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Commander Barnes spent her time analyzing communication intercepts from her spy network. The information she gathered painted a disturbing picture of Dominion intentions. The peace talks were a delaying tactic designed to give the Empire time to rebuild and reorganize. "They're planning something big," Barnes reported to Morrison during a private meeting. "Massive fleet movements toward human territory, but they're being careful to stay outside our detection range." The breakthrough came when Dr. Walsh detected coded transmissions being sent from the Dominion delegation's ship. The messages were encrypted using quantum protocols that should have been unbreakable, but human computer systems had learned to process alien encryption during 2 years of warfare. "They're coordinating a surprise attack," Walsh told Morrison and Barnes. "The entire peace conference is a setup. While we're talking, they're positioning fleets to destroy Earth and every human colony simultaneously." Morrison felt anger burn in his chest as he realized how close they had come to falling for the trap. The Dominion had never intended to honor any peace agreement. They wanted to eliminate humanity completely, not just defeat them in battle, but humanity had learned to think several moves ahead during their long war against superior technology. Admiral Grant had positioned the rebuilt human fleet in hidden locations throughout nearby systems, ready to respond to any threat. More importantly, The sabotage teams that had disrupted Dominion communications were still active throughout alien territory. The trap was sprung during the final negotiation session. Dominion security forces attempted to capture the human delegation, while their hidden fleet launched coordinated attacks on Earth and every major human colony. The assault was perfectly timed and should have ended the war in a single devastating blow. Instead, the Dominion forces found themselves facing an enemy that had anticipated their treachery. Human ships emerged from stealth positions throughout the attack zones, their weapons upgraded with technology stolen from alien wrecks and improved during months of preparation. Admiral Grant coordinated the defense from his flagship, watching as Dominion forces realized they had walked into a carefully prepared ambush. The alien fleets were larger and more powerful than anything humanity could match, but they were fighting an enemy that had learned to turn every disadvantage into strength. All ships execute Plan Omega, Grant commanded. Show them what happens when they underestimate human intelligence. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human forces used tactics that bordered on insanity, ramming damaged ships into alien formations and detonating weapons that destroyed both attacker and defender. The Dominion found themselves fighting an enemy that cared more about inflicting damage than surviving. Captain Amy Foster led a squadron of human fighters through the heart of the enemy formation, her ships weaving between massive alien battleships like insects around giants. Her pilots had been training for this moment for 2 years, learning to exploit every weakness in Dominion technology. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight," Foster told her squadron. "We're trying to hurt them so badly they never want to fight us again." On the abandoned station, Morrison and his team fought their way through Dominion security forces using weapons and tactics the aliens had never encountered. The conference room became a battlefield as human diplomats proved they were also soldiers when necessary. Supreme Commander Yithnel found himself facing Morrison in personal combat, his advanced armor and weapons pitted against human determination and creativity. The alien commander had never fought an enemy who refused to acknowledge his superiority. "You cannot win," Yithnel declared as their battle raged through the station's corridors. "The Dominion has ruled this galaxy for thousands of years. You are nothing but insects." "Maybe," Morrison replied, dodging an energy blast that would have vaporized him. "But even insects can bring down giants if there are enough of them." The turning point came when Dr. Walsh activated the computer virus she had been developing during the peace talks. The program spread through the Dominion's communication network faster than their technicians could respond, carrying an updated version of the sabotage code that had crippled their empire months earlier. This time, the virus didn't just disrupt communications. It infected every computer system in the Dominion fleet, turning their own technology against them. Weapons misfired, navigation systems failed, and life support began shutting down on thousands of alien ships. Admiral Grant watched in amazement as the mighty Dominion fleet began tearing itself apart. Ships fired on their own allies, unable to distinguish friend from foe. Others simply stopped functioning as their computer systems crashed under the viral assault. "All human forces, press the attack," Grant ordered. "Don't give them time to recover." The battle lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Dominion's surprise attack fleet. Nearly 20,000 alien ships were destroyed or captured, along with their crews and the technology that had made them seem invincible. Supreme Commander Yithnel was captured alive after his personal armor failed during his fight with Morrison. For the first time in Dominion history, their highest-ranking military leader was a prisoner of a species they had tried to exterminate. "The war is over," Morrison told the alien commander as human soldiers secured the station. "Your empire is finished." Wide-eyed Nell's glowing eyes dimmed as he realized the magnitude of his defeat. The Dominion had gambled everything on one final assault and lost completely. Without their fleet and communication network, the Empire would fragment into isolated systems that could be defeated one by one. "How?" Yithnel asked, his voice filled with something no Dominion leader had ever experienced. Despair. Morrison looked at the alien who had commanded the destruction of hundreds of worlds and felt no sympathy. You made the same mistake every tyrant makes. You thought fear was stronger than hope. You were wrong. News of humanity's impossible victory spread across the galaxy faster than the Dominion could suppress it. For the first time in 3,000 years, species that had been conquered and enslaved learned that the mighty empire could be defeated. In hidden bases and underground resistance cells, alien rebels began to whisper about the humans who had made the Dominion fleet retreat. The first contact came 3 months after the battle. A heavily damaged ship appeared at the edge of human space, broadcasting surrender codes on all frequencies. When Admiral Morrison's forces boarded the vessel, they found 3 representatives from species that had been conquered centuries ago. The Kepler rebels had been fighting a guerrilla war against Dominion occupation for over 200 years. Their leader, a tall being with blue-scaled skin, introduced himself as Vex 9 through a translation device. "We offer what little help we can provide," Vex 9 said during the first secret meeting in Luna Base's most secure conference room. Weapons, supplies, intelligence about Dominion tactics and technology. Commander Lisa Barnes studied the alien intelligence data with growing excitement. The information showed Dominion fleet movements, communication protocols, and most importantly, the locations of key strategic targets throughout their empire. "Why help us?" Barnes asked. "You don't know anything about humans." "Because you did what we thought was impossible," replied another alien, a creature that looked like living rock. "You made them afraid. For the first time in our lifetimes, Dominion commanders are questioning their own superiority." Dr. Helen Walsh worked closely with the alien scientists to understand new technologies. The rebels had developed weapons and defensive systems specifically designed to exploit Dominion weaknesses. Most importantly, they shared intelligence about the Empire's quantum communication network. Every Dominion ship, every base, every command center is connected through this network, explained the rock-being scientist. It coordinates their entire empire across thousands of star systems, but it has a critical vulnerability. The network used quantum entanglement to enable instant communication across galactic distances. However, if specific nodes were disrupted, in the right sequence, cascading failures would spread throughout the entire system. The Dominion would be reduced to isolated units unable to coordinate with each other. Meanwhile, Dominion ground forces began landing on isolated human colonies throughout the outer systems. Admiral Thrush VOR, humiliated by his retreat from Earth, had convinced his superiors to authorize a more aggressive campaign. General Pete Collins took command of Earth's ground defense forces as reports came in of alien landings on Mars, Europa, and the mining colonies of the asteroid belt. The enemy soldiers were individually superior to human troops, wearing powered armor that made them nearly invincible and carrying weapons that could destroy buildings with single shots, but the Dominion forces quickly discovered that conquering human territory was very different from occupying it. Every human colony had been turned into a fortress during the year of preparation. Citizens who had never held weapons before took up arms to defend their homes. On Mars base, factory workers used industrial equipment to create improvised explosives. Children as young as 10 served as scouts and messengers, moving through maintenance tunnels that were too small for alien soldiers. Elderly colonists who could barely walk volunteered for suicide missions against enemy positions. The siege of Europa Station became legendary throughout human space. When Dominion forces landed on the ice moon, they expected to capture the research facility within hours. Instead, they found themselves fighting building by building against defenders, who had turned every corridor into a killing field. Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's chief researcher, led the defense using equipment that was never meant for warfare. Industrial lasers became sniper weapons. Mining charges were turned into booby traps. Even the station's life support system was weaponized, flooding sections with toxic gases when aliens tried to advance. They think superior technology makes them invincible, Kim reported to General Collins during one of the few communication windows. But technology doesn't mean much when the environment itself is trying to kill you. The Dominion soldiers found themselves facing an enemy that fought with a combination of desperation and creativity they had never encountered. Human defenders used tactics that seemed insane but somehow worked. They collapsed buildings on advancing troops, flooded tunnels to trap alien soldiers, and used their knowledge of local terrain to set ambush that decimated enemy formations. Captain Roy Grant, promoted to admiral after the space battle, coordinated relief efforts for the besieged colonies. His ships had to run a gauntlet of Dominion patrols to deliver supplies and reinforcements to isolated human outposts. "Every run is a suicide mission," Grant told his pilots before their latest supply drop. "But those people down there are counting on us. We don't leave anyone behind." The supply runs became a new form of warfare as human ships developed techniques for evading Dominion patrols. They used asteroid fields for cover, hid in the shadows of planets, and coordinated their movements to confuse alien tracking systems. Commander Barnes worked with rebel intelligence to plan humanity's most ambitious operation yet. If they could disrupt the Dominion communication network, the entire empire would be thrown into chaos. But the mission would require human teams to infiltrate alien territory and sabotage heavily defended installations. "It's a one-way trip," Barnes explained to the volunteers during their final briefing. "We can get you to the targets, but extraction will be impossible. You'll be on your own in the middle of enemy space." Every volunteer knew the odds, but they stepped forward anyway. Soldiers, engineers, and scientists formed small teams that would travel and captured alien ships to communication nodes throughout Dominion space. Their mission was simple: plant viral programs that would cascade through the network and bring down the entire system. Lieutenant Amy Foster led one of the sabotage teams to a major communication hub in the Vega system. Her team spent weeks studying captured Dominion technology, learning to pass as alien maintenance workers. "Remember, we only get one chance," Foster told her team as their stolen ship approached the target. "Once we start the upload, every Dominion ship in the sector will be hunting us." The sabotage operations began simultaneously across 50 different star systems. Human teams that had trained for months in alien technology infiltrated communication centers that had never been attacked in the Empire's entire history. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. The viral program spread through the Dominion network faster than their technicians could stop them. Within hours, entire sectors lost contact with Central Command. Fleet formations scattered as ships received contradictory orders or no orders at all. Admiral HFY found himself commanding a fleet that could no longer communicate with other Dominion forces. His ships were isolated in human space, cut off from reinforcement and supply. For the first time in his career, he was fighting alone against an enemy that seemed to anticipate his every move. How was this possible? He demanded of his communications. "Officer, the network has been secure for thousands of years, but the damage was already done." Across the galaxy, Dominion forces lost coordination. Some units turned on each other, unable to verify friend from foe. Others retreated to defensive positions, abandoning conquered territories they could no longer hold. General Collins received reports that Dominion ground forces were withdrawing from human colonies throughout the outer systems. Without support from their fleets and cut off from Central Command, alien soldiers found themselves outnumbered and outgunned by defenders who knew the terrain. "They're running," Collins reported to Admiral Morrison during a secure communication. "After 2 years of fighting, they're actually running from us." The impossible had happened again. Humanity had not only survived the Dominion's invasion, but had turned the tables on their attackers. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was fracturing under pressure from a species they had dismissed as primitive. But Admiral Morrison knew this victory came with a price. The sabotage operations had cost hundreds of human lives, and the war was far from over. The Dominion still had millions of ships and billions of soldiers. They would adapt, reorganize, and return stronger than before. "Send a message to all human forces," Morrison ordered. Tell them we've won a major victory, but the war continues. The Dominion will want revenge for what we've done to them." As reports came in from across the galaxy, it became clear that humanity had changed the balance of power forever. The Empire, that had seemed invincible, was now vulnerable, and species throughout the galaxy were beginning to believe that freedom might be possible after all. The Galactic Dominion fleet arrived exactly 1 year after their ultimatum, appearing at the edge of the solar system in a display of overwhelming force that had broken the spirit of countless civilizations. 50,000 warships materialized. From hyperspace in perfect geometric formations, their hulls gleaming with the dark metal that had conquered half the galaxy, Admiral HFY stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel called the Eternal Dominance that was larger than most human cities. He had personally overseen the destruction of 47 species during his long career. This would be his 48th, and he expected it to be as routine as all the others. "Begin standard approach," he commanded his crew. "Transmit surrender. Demands on all frequencies. If they do not respond within 1 hour, commence planetary bombardment." But as the Dominion fleet moved deeper into the solar system, something unexpected happened. The empty space around them suddenly filled with explosions as thousands of cloaked quantum mines detonated simultaneously. The alien ships, which had not raised their shields because they expected no resistance, took devastating damage from the first human attack. Nearly 1,000 Dominion vessels were destroyed in the opening moments of the battle. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the mighty Dominion fleet had taken casualties during an invasion. Alarm sirens wailed throughout the alien formation as crews scrambled to understand what had happened. "Impossible," HFY muttered as damage reports flooded his command center. "These primitives do not possess stealth technology." Admiral Jake Morrison watched the explosions from the bridge of his flagship, a human dreadnought called the Defiance. The opening strike had worked better than anyone had dared hope. Now came the real test. "All ships, execute attack pattern Delta," Morrison commanded. "Make them remember this day." The human fleet burst from hiding places throughout the outer solar system. Ships emerged from behind asteroids, uncloaked from stealth fields, and launched themselves from concealed bases on distant moons. They moved in patterns the Dominion had never seen before, weaving through space in seemingly random directions that somehow avoided enemy fire while delivering devastating attacks. Captain Roy Grant led the first wave of human fighters in a modified assault cruiser. His ship was a third the size of the smallest Dominion vessel, but it moved like a living thing through the alien formation. Grant's pilots had spent months learning to fly in ways that defied conventional tactics. "Remember your training," Grant told his squadron over the communications channel. "Hit them fast, hit them hard, and get out before they know what happened." The human ships struck at weak points in the Dominion formation that Commander Lisa Barnes had identified during months of analysis. They targeted command ships, communication relays, and supply vessels while avoiding the heavily armed battleships. Each attack lasted only minutes before the humans vanished back into the chaos of battle. Dr. Helen Walsh's quantum torpedoes proved devastatingly effective against the alien fleet. The new weapons used frequency modulation to penetrate Dominion energy shields that had protected their ships for thousands of years. Explosions rippled through the enemy formation as human warheads found their targets. HFY struggled to understand what was happening to his fleet. The humans fought like no enemy he had ever faced. They refused to engage in honorable ship-to-ship combat, instead striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before retaliation could arrive. "Deploy fighter squadrons," he ordered. "Drive these insects back to their nests so we can crush them properly." But the Dominion fighters found themselves facing an enemy that had learned to turn every disadvantage into strength. Human pilots flew ships that were smaller and faster than alien fighters. More importantly, they fought with a desperation that alien pilots, safe in their superior technology, could not match. Lieutenant Amy Foster piloted her interceptor through a swarm of enemy fighters, her ship's weapons cutting through alien hulls like paper. Around her, Dozens of other human pilots engaged in dogfights that looked more like aerial acrobatics than traditional space combat. "They're not used to fighting someone who doesn't care about dying," Foster reported to her squadron leader. "Use that against them." The battle raged for 6 days across millions of cubic kilometers of space. The Dominion fleet, which had expected to crush human resistance in hours, found itself locked in a grinding war of attrition against an enemy that refused to break. Human tactics evolved minute by minute as battlefield commanders adapted to alien responses. When the Dominion deployed heavier shields, humans switched to kinetic weapons. When aliens tried to box in human formations, the defenders scattered into individual ships that were impossible to track. Captain Grant found himself leading increasingly desperate attacks against Dominion supply lines. His ship had been damaged so many times that it barely held together, but his crew continued fighting with equipment that should have failed hours ago. "Sir, we're down to 40% power and our weapons are overheating," his weapons officer reported. "Then we ram them," Grant replied without hesitation. "Make every shot count because we might not get another chance." The turning point came when human forces managed to destroy 3 Dominion command ships in a coordinated strike. Without central coordination, alien formations began making tactical errors that human commanders exploited ruthlessly. Admiral Morrison coordinated the final phase of the battle from his damaged bridge. Half his fleet was gone, but the survivors had learned to fight like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. "All remaining ships, converge on the enemy flagship," Morrison ordered. "If we're going down, we're taking their admiral with us." The attack on the Eternal Dominance was a suicide mission that somehow succeeded. Human ships swarmed the massive alien vessel, their weapons tearing through armor that had never been penetrated. Threshvar watched in disbelief as primitive technology carved his flagship apart. "Retreat," he finally ordered, his voice filled with something no Dominion commander had felt in centuries: fear. "All ships withdraw to safe distance." The human fleet was too damaged to pursue, but they had achieved something impossible. For the first time in galactic history, a primitive species had forced the mighty Dominion to retreat. The alien fleet limped away from Earth, leaving behind nearly 8,000 destroyed ships and the shattered remains of their reputation for invincibility. Admiral Morrison stood in the ruins of his command center looking at damage reports that showed humanity had lost nearly half its fleet. But they were still alive, still fighting, and still free. "Sir," Commander Barnes reported, "we're receiving communications from other species throughout the galaxy." "Word of our victory is spreading," Morrison nodded grimly. This was only the beginning. The Dominion would return with more ships, better tactics, and a burning desire for revenge. But humanity had proven something important. Even the mightiest empire could bleed. "Send a message to Earth," Morrison ordered. "Tell them we won the first battle. Now the real war begins." The transformation of Earth began within hours of humanity's defiant response to the Galactic Dominion. Every factory, every research facility, every military base shifted into emergency production mode. The planet that had been moving toward peace for decades suddenly became the largest weapons manufacturing center in human history. Dr. Helen Walsh found herself leading a team of 12,000 scientists and engineers working around the clock in underground facilities. They had less than 11 months to develop weapons that could somehow hurt an enemy with technology centuries beyond their own. The task seemed impossible, but Walsh refused to accept failure. "We can't match their power," she told her team during their first emergency meeting. "But we can be smarter, faster, and more creative than anything before." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Deep space archaeological teams had been finding fragments of ancient alien technology for years. Most of it was considered worthless junk from dead civilizations. Now every piece was precious. Walsh's teams began reverse engineering devices that were millions of years old, looking for anything that might give humanity an edge. Captain Roy Grant was put in charge of converting Earth's civilian infrastructure into military assets. Orbital factories that had been building passenger ships were retooled to produce warships. Mining operations in the asteroid belt were expanded to harvest rare metals needed for advanced weapons. Every space elevator was modified to carry military cargo. We need to think like we're building an entire military from scratch, Grant told his logistics teams. Because that's exactly what we're doing. The changes were visible from space. Earth's orbital shipyards, which had been building a few dozen ships per year, now launched new vessels every day. They were smaller than traditional warships and built with materials that barely met safety standards, but they were fast and heavily armed. Commander Lisa Barnes worked with military leaders from every nation to develop new tactics. Traditional space combat involved large ships trading volleys at long range until one side was destroyed. Barnes knew humanity could not win that kind of fight. We hit them fast and hard, then disappear before they can respond, she explained to a room full of admirals and generals. We use every dirty trick, every underhanded tactic, every piece of terrain to our advantage. The training programs Barnes developed were unlike anything in military history. Pilots learned to fly their ships through asteroid fields at maximum speed. Soldiers practiced fighting in zero gravity while their equipment was failing. Everyone learned to make weapons and explosives from common materials. Lieutenant Amy Foster was assigned to gather intelligence about the coming invasion. Her job was made easier by the Dominion's arrogance. They sent scout ships to observe Earth's preparations, apparently unconcerned that humans might be able to learn from watching them. They're not even trying to hide their capabilities, Foster reported to Admiral Morrison. It's like they want us to see how powerful they are. But Foster's analysis revealed something the aliens had not intended to show. Their ships moved in predictable patterns. Their formations followed ancient tactical manuals. Their commanders made decisions based on thousands of years of fighting primitive enemies. The most disturbing intelligence came from deep space monitoring stations. Foster's teams intercepted communications from other parts of the galaxy. They learned that every species the Dominion had offered terms to was eventually exterminated. Some lasted decades as slave laborers, but none survived in the long term. Surrender was never really an option, Foster told Morrison during a classified briefing. They're going to kill us all eventually, no matter what we do. This news spread quickly through the military chain of command and then to civilian leaders. Instead of causing panic, it had the opposite effect. Knowing that death was certain either way, humans began taking risks they never would have considered before. Children as young as 12 volunteered for military training. Elderly scientists worked themselves to exhaustion developing new technologies. Farmers learned to build improvised weapons alongside their crops. Artists created propaganda that inspired entire populations to fight. Dr. Walsh's teams made their first major breakthrough 6 months into the preparation period. They discovered that Dominion energy shields, while incredibly powerful, operated on specific frequencies. By modulating human weapons to match those frequencies, they could sometimes penetrate alien defenses. It won't work every time, Walsh explained to President Cooper during a secure video conference, but it gives us a chance to hurt them when they're not expecting it. The quantum torpedo was humanity's first truly alien-killing weapon. It used principles stolen from ancient technology combined with human engineering. The warheads were unstable and dangerous to manufacture, but they could punch through energy shields that had protected alien ships for millennia. Captain Grant oversaw the installation of defensive systems throughout the solar system. Traditional orbital defense platforms were useless against Dominion weapons, so humans built something different. Cloaked mines were scattered throughout space. Hidden missile launchers were built into asteroids. Every piece of space debris was turned into a potential weapon. When they come, they'll find that empty space isn't empty anymore, Grant reported to Morrison. Every cubic meter between here and Jupiter will be hostile territory. The mining colonies worked frantically to gather materials for the war effort. Mars base doubled its population as workers flooded in from Earth. The outer planet stations expanded their operations to strip mine entire moons. Even civilian ships were converted to carry military supplies. Commander Barnes' training programs produced a new kind of human soldier. They could fight in any environment, use any weapon, and adapt to any situation. More importantly, they had accepted that survival was less important than making the enemy pay for every victory. As the months passed, humanity's preparations became visible throughout the solar system. Ships moved in constant streams between planets. New construction projects appeared on every major moon and asteroid. The space around Earth bristled with weapons and defensive systems. The Dominion's advanced scouts arrived 3 months before the deadline. They found a solar system that looked nothing like what they expected. Instead of a primitive civilization begging for mercy, they discovered a fortress defended by beings who had spent almost a year preparing for war. The lead scout ship transmitted a final message to Earth before departing. Zefka's crystalline face appeared once more on human screens. "You have made your choice," the alien said. "The Dominion fleet will arrive as promised. Your resistance will be remembered for the brief moment before your extinction." Admiral Morrison stood in the command center that had become his second home over the past 11 months. Around him, displays showed the positions of thousands of human ships and millions of defensive weapons scattered throughout local space. "Let them come," he said quietly to Commander Barnes. "We'll show them what happens when you corner a species with nothing left to lose." The message came on a Tuesday morning when most of Earth was still drinking coffee and checking news feeds. Admiral Jake Morrison was standing in the command center of Luna base watching the morning briefing when every screen in the room suddenly went dark. Then came the sound that would haunt humanity for years to come, a deep humming that seemed to vibrate through the metal walls. Themselves, the screens flickered back to life, showing something that should not have been possible. A face that was not human stared back at them. The creature looked like it was made of living crystal with geometric patterns that shifted and moved across its transparent skin. Its voice came through the speakers in perfect English, though its mouth never moved. "People of Earth, I am Zefka, of the Galactic Dominion. Your species has been evaluated and found to be primitive. You have exactly 1 rotation of your planet around your star to surrender unconditionally or face complete removal from existence." Morrison felt his stomach drop as the alien continued speaking. The creature explained that humanity would be classified as manual laborers and moved to work colonies throughout the galaxy. Earth would be stripped of all useful materials and turned into a mining operation. Human technology would be confiscated and human culture would be erased. "You have developed space travel and basic energy weapons," Zefka said with what sounded like amusement. "This makes you useful as workers but dangerous if left to develop further. The Dominion has ruled this galaxy for over 3,000 of your years. We have absorbed or eliminated over 200 species. Resistance is not possible." The hologram showed images that made Morrison's blood run cold. Massive ships that looked like floating cities drifted through space in perfect formations. Weapons that could crack planets and half-fired beams of pure energy across impossible distances. Alien soldiers in powered armor that moved faster than human eyes could follow. "Your military forces are toys compared to our weakest ships," the crystal being continued. "Your largest weapons could not damage our smallest scout vessels. Your population of 8 billion will be reduced to 2 billion workers. The rest will be eliminated as excess." When the transmission ended, the command center fell silent except for the hum of computers and life support systems. Morrison looked around at his staff and saw his own shock reflected in their faces. Commander Lisa Barnes was the first to speak. "Sir, we need to contact Earth Command immediately," she said. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could see her hands shaking slightly. "The President needs to know about this." Morrison nodded and activated the quantum communication link to Earth. Within minutes, President Dan Cooper appeared on the main screen. His face went pale as Morrison relayed the alien message word for word. "How long do we have to verify this is real?" Cooper asked. "Sir, our deep space sensors are picking up massive objects at the edge of the solar system," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. "Whatever sent that message has the technology to back up their threats." Over the next 6 hours, emergency meetings were held in every major government building on Earth. Military leaders, scientists, and politicians gathered in secure facilities to discuss humanity's response. The evidence was overwhelming. Earth was facing an enemy with technology centuries beyond their own. Dr. Helen Walsh, Earth's top weapons researcher, presented her analysis to the Global Defense Council. Based on what we've seen, their smallest ships are larger than our biggest battleships. Their energy weapons appear to be plasma-based with yields comparable to nuclear weapons. Their defensive systems seem to use some form of energy shielding we don't understand. General P. Collins stood up from his chair. What are our chances if we fight? Walsh looked down at her datapad. Less than 1%, sir. Our current weapons and defenses would be like throwing rocks at a tank. The debate that followed was intense but brief. Some council members argued for immediate surrender to save as many lives as possible. Others suggested trying to negotiate better terms. But Admiral Morrison and Commander Barnes presented a third option that surprised everyone. We fight, Morrison said simply. Not because we can win, but because surrender means the slow death of our entire species anyway. If we're going to die, we die on our feet? Barnes stepped forward with a tablet full of data. I've been analyzing their message and the tactical information they showed us. They're powerful, but they're also arrogant. They've been winning for so long they've become predictable. Every conquest they showed us followed the same pattern. What are you suggesting? Asked President Cooper. That we use the one advantage we have, Barnes replied. They expect us to surrender or fight like every other species they've conquered. We don't do either. We make them work for every inch of space, every minute of time, every drop of human blood. The vote was taken at midnight Earth time. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every space station cast their ballots. When the counting was done, the result was unanimous. Humanity would fight. Even against impossible odds, even facing certain death, they would not go quietly into extinction. Earth had 1 year to prepare for a war they could not win but refused to lose. The message was sent back to Zefka and the Galactic Dominion the next morning. It contained only 2 words: come and take it.